Here now with reaction, Green Beret combat veteran Nick Freitas and Hudson Institute fellow Jeremy Hunt. Gentlemen, thank you. Mr. Hunt, Secretary Bessent makes clear that we are going to, quote, collapse this regime, and he told CNBC that economic pressure alone means the U.S. won't need to start full-scale combat again. Do you agree?
Well, first and foremost, we're dealing with a barbaric, murderous regime in Iran. And President Trump did not start this war. He is finishing a war that Iran started with us 47 years ago. They've been attacking American troops, attacking our allies all around the world. And so now with the economic sanctions, with the economic squeeze, what it does is it enables us to stop Iran from being able to fund all their proxies around the world, being able to attack, and you have all the munitions that attack us in different places around the world. And so what that does is it squeezes them there, but we do have to have an all-the-above approach. I mean, let's remember, these are the same people who did October 7th, who have been attacking with proxies all around the world. And so it's important that we continue to show them that, look, we have options. President Trump, his back is not against the wall. I think the legacy media likes to paint this picture that President Trump is somehow his back against the wall without options. He is the commander-in-chief of the greatest military in the world. We have options, and honestly, we have an opportunity to finish them off if we so choose.
And Nick, I think that many of the cabinet officials are making a similar point. Certainly Secretary Bessent in the clip we saw, but also Secretary Chris Wright of Energy makes clear that even with these blockades, roughly 15 barrels a day are now leaving the region overall, 9 million through the strait. And so when the president says economic pressure, economic D-Day, coupled with obviously all of his military tools, do you think that we're winning? And by winning, how do you define that? How can we convince Americans that this has been a very positive action for them, keeping Iran out of getting a nuclear device?
I think it's very fair to say that anything that we can do to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon is absolutely essential. I completely support this. I think there's a lot of Americans, too, that also question the timing of this, because the Iranian regime is waiting for one thing and one thing only, the midterms. They're hoping Democrats actually take control in the midterms because they believe that that's going to be able to prevent the president from being able to stop the Ayatollah. Now, I'll be honest with you. I think long term, there's no such thing as a lasting deal without the fall of the regime. And the question is how do you achieve that without the United States engaging in a nation-building exercise? And I think the only way to do that is to strip the Iranian regime of the one leverage point that they have left, and that is being able to prevent oil from leaving the Strait of Hormuz. And as we're starting to see more success in commercial shipping being able to get through, as we're starting to see more people that are willing to take that risk, I think that's going to have a positive impact overall. Not to mention the fact that when the Iranian president, which again is not the Ayatollah, but when the Iranian president says that he's eager for an end to the war at this point, that signifies that there's growing division within the Iranian government. And that's what you also want to see. But listen, I've fought in this part of the world before, and it's not easy. If you want a long-term solution with Iran, it's going to have to come with a regime change. And I don't want the United States to be involved in another nation-building exercise. But if we play our cards right, if we take away the regime's ability to control the Strait of Hormuz, I think it seriously takes away the only leverage point they still have.
And Nick, just to stay with you for a moment, the president has been consistent all along. He has said two big things. One is the whole point here is to make sure Iran is not nuclear capable. Number two, he thinks regime change has to come from within. He hopes the people of Iran take over their country, watch those protesters put down by their own government. Do you actually think, with the Iranian president signaling he wants to end the war, do you think that Iran is actually blinking, or are they just preparing a response to these sanctions and tapping along, waiting out the midterm results?
I think they're trying to wait out the midterm results as long as they possibly can. But the unfortunate thing that we saw with the protests, and you're absolutely right, Donald Trump laid out 4 different objectives for these various strikes. And we've seen success along many of those objectives. The real question of long-term regime change is, once again, the president's right. It has to be organic to the Iranian people. The United States military cannot do the heavy lifting for that. The real question is going to be, is there sufficient organic support for overthrowing the regime? In the meantime, I think what we need to do is make sure that they never have the ability to get a nuclear weapon. And so that's unfortunately going to continue to result in military strikes from time to time, certainly economic sanctions. But the more that we can apply pressure on this regime and provide space for the Iranian people to be able to make that decision, the better off that we're going to be long term. But again, if there's anything that all of this has proven at this stage of the game, is that there is only one leverage point that the Ayatollah has, and that is threatening the Strait of Hormuz. And there's a number of ways that we could potentially deal with that point of leverage long term that could rob them of any power that they have over the region.
And Jeremy, death to Israel, death to America. Iran chanted it loudly and proudly for decades. Finally, President Trump had heard enough. How in the world has this become a partisan issue, in that you have an entire Democratic Party, many of our Jewish Democratic members in the Senate, criticizing President Trump over taking on Iran, and I think sort of sides with Iran on certain things?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it's really saddening to see how people who are, live in the same country as us, that purport to love America just like we do, but just because of politics are willing to side with the regime that has been so barbaric and has done so many horrific acts, spilled American blood. Let's remember this. Americans have been killed at the hands of this murderous regime. Of course, what we saw on October 7th was so evil and so brutal. And so finally, as I said before, President Trump is putting an end to all of this that's been going on for decades. This war did not start just several months ago. This has actually been decades in the making. And so what we're doing right now is showing decisive action, actually showing force to put an end to it. Because what we saw in the Obama and the Biden years is just pacifying this terrorist regime does not get us anywhere. We have to come in with actual American strength as the greatest military on earth and show them that they are out of options and that it's time that we're opening up the Strait of Hormuz and we're ending this regime that has been wreaking havoc around the world.
Thank you, Nick and Jeremy.
All right, thanks for watching. Check out my new podcast, Hanging Out with me, Sean Hannity. The big interviews, the debates you won't get anywhere else. Like and subscribe for new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday.